Hey, we're cooking with gas here on the Jewcast.
Okay, careful using a phrase like that.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries of a sham.
Tradition!
Oh, shut up, Carl! Shut your goddamn Jew mouth! You people are why there's war in the Middle East!
Gekackt von Jan.
Nebbig.
Verpoepoepoe.
Vermischt.
Verkackt.
Vertutzt.
Verstonken.
Farted.
Exactly.
You're what Grammy Hall would call a real Jew.
Alrighty, here we go again. Episode 72 coming at you of American Jew.
Yeah, hey, I'm Jonathan Randall.
I am Jordan Ferber, and oh boy, there is a lot going on this week.
You know, before we get into everything, I just want to say, we really appreciate everybody who's listening to the podcast and all of our fans and everything. And leave us a review on iTunes, a 5-star review, and write a little nice comment. We really appreciate it. So if you guys could take like 20 seconds to do that, thank you.
I always think that, we talk a lot about all the problems here, and I don't know if we necessarily have too many of the answers, but I think it's important to highlight some of these issues and talk about some of the problems and bring them out into the open, because that's the only way we can really deal with some of the root issues. Too many people are out there just spreading hatred and anger and not listening to why the other side is upset with the words they're using. You have people from the Black Lives Matter movement that are going out of their way to lump the Jews in with all this bigotry and hatred.
Well, I mean, people want to blame the Jews, and you're right. Continuing these anti-Semitic tropes and reinforcing them about how like the Jews control everything, the Jews control the bank, the Jews control the media. It doesn't help, and especially in this time when we're fighting to end racism, to end bigotry, we're fighting for equality. To kind of start talking hate against the Jews, it's kind of crazy almost. We all need to stand together right now. We don't need to be like now passing the buck. And of course, anti-Semitism isn't getting the same kind of coverage as perhaps some like racist issues are. I'm not like saying that issues that when it comes to African American community aren't important and shouldn't be highlighted right now. But it's especially frustrating when people that are fighting for these rights and speaking up against these rights are putting Jews down while they're doing so, or spreading, anti-Semitic tropes and anti-Semitism.
And I think probably most disturbing is that apparently people are turning to Nick Cannon as their moral compass.
Well, I don't think anybody's doing that. They're barely turning to Nick Cannon if they want to be wild and out. But Nick Cannon spread some anti-Semitic remarks on his podcast that was reposted with, an ex-member of Public Enemy who was kicked out of the group, Professor Griff, because he said anti-Semitic things like that Jews were wicked, and this led to Nick Cannon being fired from Viacom. Now, of course, Nick Cannon has issued a lot of apologies to the Jewish people. He's very sorry. But, the same thing happened with Deshaun Jackson we were talking about last week. Oh, we didn't realize what we were saying is anti-Semitic. That doesn't matter. If white celebrity goes and says a bunch of racist things, and then he's like, oh, I didn't realize they were racist. Like, the guy's already canceled. There seems to be a little bit of a double standard where if you're saying things that are anti-Semitic, you get more of a slap of a wrist opposed to if you say something that's, racist. And I'm not saying that either one's okay. Both of them are wrong. But I'm just saying, like, it's crazy that, at a time when we're fighting for racial injustices to have people spreading this kind of hate.
It's really disturbing that there are so many people that come out to, like, the fact that there are a lot of, other celebrities and other public figures that are coming out to defend these statements, even after some of the people that have made them have apologized. Whether or not you want to believe the apology or not, it's hard to tell whether or not people are legitimately apologizing because they see the wrongs of their actions or if because they've lost a job over it.
Right. It's hard to know what's really, their motivation. But whatever the motivation to post or say anti-Semitic things. Ice Cube was posting some things that were anti-Semitic again and reinforcing anti-Semitic tropes. And this whole thing, the Rothschilds control the world, Jews control the world. David Cross used to have a joke about like the 7 Jewish bankers in like a basement controlling the world. Like it's dangerous, and there's enough, hatred and anger going on in the world right now that we don't need to like feed into these things, and we don't need celebrities that people look up to be, spreading this kind of language and these kind of sentiments, even though if that's not what they mean and they're not trying to be anti-Semitic or they think that what they're saying is correct or the truth, there's other ways to say it and get your points across without kind of putting down a whole, religion, race of people.
At least we have people in our corner that deserve to be in more than one Hall of Fame. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has pretty much come out very staunchly against a lot of this anti-Semitic rhetoric and shaming Ice Cube for spreading some of those things. And I think it's really interesting that, Kareem says essentially what we've been saying all along. He says the lesson never changes. Why is it so hard for people to learn? No one is free until everyone is free. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. If we're going to be outraged by injustice, let us be outraged by injustice against anyone. And it's funny that he wrote this whole article, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that was published in the Hollywood Reporter, and Ice Cube came out and slammed him for it, saying, shame on the Hollywood Reporter, who obviously gave Kareem 30 pieces of silver to cut us down without even a phone call.
Right, that it's like a Judas remark or something, right?
Basically calling him out for being but ultimately I don't know how you can argue with Kareem's point. I don't see how anybody can take issue with it. Absolutely. Shame on the Hollywood Reporter for wanting to spread love and unity. That's not what Hollywood's about. Yeah. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy just how much anti-Semitism is happening, everywhere. A far-right politician in Canada was posting videos and spreading, anti-Semitism, wanting to get all Jews out of Canada, trying to get all Jews out of Canada. It's crazy. His name is Travis Patron. He's the leader of a fringe white nationalist Canadian Nationalist Party. And he basically says the Jews are inside manipulators and, same thing, playing into all these kind of, Jewish stereotypes. Everywhere these people go, they infiltrate the media, they hijack the central banks, and they infect the body politic like a parasite. Like, oh my God, that's like, it's just...
that's how you know anti-Semitism is a real problem, that it is even in Canada.
That's horrible. That's happening in Canada. That in Europe, the oldest surviving Jewish cemetery in Europe was vandalized. At least 50 gravestones in the medieval Jewish cemetery in the city of Worms were smeared with greenish paint. This is crazy. And then, I know we talk a lot, of course, about Israel, about the plight of the Palestinian people. All these anti-Semitic attacks, people saying anti-Semitic things, these celebrities, it all makes Israelis more afraid and want to, make sure that keep the occupation going, makes them fear, the Palestinian people more because they're afraid that, they're going to lose the land, they're going to start rounding us up again, like the Holocaust. These are it's the building up to it. So, of course we speak out against the occupation. I'm against the occupation. I'm against the treatment of the Palestinian people. But, I'm also just trying to raise awareness why so many Israeli people are so freaked out and so afraid. And it's such, a topic for them when it comes up, and they're so passionate about it, and they feel like Israel can do no wrong, and they're just trying to protect themselves because they're so afraid because of reasons like this.
It's a tough thing, to look at what's happening, to see that there doesn't seem to be anybody on either side that is calling for unity, for compromise, for a recognition of what the other side is also going through. I think that there's such a tunnel vision on both sides of this issue. For Jewish people around the world, that it is scary to think that we're being marginalized within our own people, that our own people are putting the rest of us in a position that we have to defend actions that we don't believe in, or that we have to defend the Jews' right to exist. But the methods that are being used in some cases are not a viewpoint that I want to align myself with. We keep talking about how continuing with the occupation and having...
Right, I feel like we try to talk about a two-state solution, to have a Palestine and an Israel, but a lot of people want a one state. But I just want peace in the region. There's so much anti-Semitism. It's easy to see how Israeli people feel. They just are being drowned and just trying to get some air, and the Palestinian people feel the same way. It's just such a clusterfuck, and anti-Semitism keeps happening. Even on Twitter, the hashtag Jewish privilege was going around. Anti-Semites were trying to spread the stereotypes that Jews are privileged because we control all the wealth and we run the global media. And, white supremacists and nationalists, they were all excited to kind of spread this anti-Semitic hashtag, these conspiracies. And then thankfully a lot of Jewish people, they flipped it. They flipped it on it, and they took the hashtag and they started saying how they were victims of anti-Semitism or bigotry, or how things were harder for them because they were Jewish. No one person controls everything. It's just kind of dangerous. Saying these kind of things, it encourages hate, it encourages bigotry. It's just kind of like fanning the flames of it. And it needs to end, whether it's being said by anti-Semites on Twitter or on YouTube.
I'll say this: in my house, my mother controls the media. She gets to control the channel changer.
The changer.
Yeah, she gets to decide what's on TV.
Well, the protests aren't only happening because of Black Lives Matter. They're happening in Israel too, especially when it comes to Netanyahu. There were protests in front of Netanyahu's house. Over 50 people got arrested. Because Netanyahu is corrupt. They think Netanyahu should not be the prime minister of Israel right now. They don't think the way he handled the coronavirus is really good. There's a resurgence in Israel that is really horrible of the coronavirus.
And he's been indicted.
He has been indicted, from bribery and corruption. He's been the prime minister for a while, and he is corrupt. He kind of worked the election right now, so he would trade off being prime minister so he could kind of use the power of prime minister to, help him with his court cases. But, this Black Flag movement in Israel, they have been organizing different rallies and protests there for a long time, and now their most recent one is just Netanyahu and to get Netanyahu out of office. They had ones in Jerusalem, and they had one in Tel Aviv.
Yeah, well, I think it's mostly because of the corruption stuff. I think that seems to be the thing there. There are a lot of people who live in Israel who have grown up underneath that haven't even known an Israel without Netanyahu in power.
Right. Well, apparently the protests in Jerusalem were about his corruption, and the protests in Tel Aviv were about the way the coronavirus has been handled.
Right. But over 50 people were arrested in Jerusalem. They were surrounding Netanyahu's house, calling on him to resign.
Oh, yeah, they were trying to break down the barriers in his house. They had to take out fire hoses to stop these people. But people are upset, and I think they have every right to be.
Well, it's interesting. I think there are a lot of people that we've talked to and people that I know who support Netanyahu simply because he claims to be working for the Jewish people. But I think it's so much more complicated than that, and the corruption charges are so easily dismissed by those people. And I don't understand how you can overlook.
Well, the Jewish state, the annexation, a lot of annexation talk was what he used to try to get support from the people that were going to vote for him, and his supporters, and what he ran on kind of was like the annexation. And of course, we think that's a bad idea. But, people love him for it because he's about the state of Israel. But the truth is, he faces charges of fraud and breach of trust in 3 separate cases, and one of them includes bribery. And, of course, he's denied any wrongdoing, and he thinks that the charges are, part of an effort by political opponents in the media, law enforcement, and prosecutors to remove him from office. It kind of sounds like Trump,
He is very Trumpian.
Everything's a conspiracy against him. So, I'm glad people are protesting for what they believe in, whether it's to get rid of the corrupt Netanyahu, whether it's to fight against anti-Semitism. The Jews always have an uphill battle. It's always a struggle where a majority of Jewish people are white, especially in America. Jewish people are successful, whether they're involved in banking or the media or they're lawyers or so I feel like people have a harder time having compassion or feeling bad for anti-Semitism or the Jews. So, you guys are doing okay. It seems relevant in society to discuss how awful anti-Semitism is opposed to hatreds of other kind. But it's still wrong, grouping any group of people in a box that everybody is the same thing or everybody's one thing, never works out well for anybody. And, we got to put an end to these kind of horrible anti-Semites spreading these anger, this hatred, this ugliness, and, especially when it comes to some of these celebrities, just because you didn't realize it or you don't think what you're saying, you figure out before, you guys have publicists, you guys have lawyers, these celebrities have people that could tell them, dude, don't be doing that.
And we all have fucking Google. I mean, I don't understand how people who make those kind of hateful statements can come out the following day and say, oh, you misunderstood what I said. Let me clarify. It's like, well, you screwed it up. If you have, I say this all the time. If you have to come out the next day and clarify what you said, then you didn't say it right. I think it goes back to the same thing. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said essentially the same thing. I mean, that's basically what he said. But you got to choose your words really carefully, because if there's too many opportunities for it to be misunderstood, and people are looking for reasons to call people out for misguided statements like that. And if the tension is already so high, for you to not choose your words carefully and make sure that you're being understood, I just don't understand that.
Yeah, people definitely, whatever they want to speak first and ask questions later, especially a lot of these celebrities, when it comes to social media, something comes in their head, they feel passionate about something, they want to get in on it.
Yeah.
All right, well, unfortunately, there's all this, ugliness happening, a lot of anti-Semitism that we talked about this week, but we're going to steer the conversation away from anti-Semitism and bring on our guest for today.
Pretty exciting.
A family member. We're having a first family member as a guest. We're having the man responsible for, I don't know, maybe me hating Judaism, me being so knowledgeable about it. My dad is going to come on the show. My dad, Stephen Randall. He said we could pretty much talk about almost anything. Almost. He told me there's a couple things we can't talk about, but we're gonna have him on and we're gonna talk, and let's see how it goes. Yeah,
let's bring Juverine himself onto the show.
All right, here we go. We have my dad on the show. Thanks for coming on American Jew, Dad.
Been called worse. Go ahead.
Welcome to our show. It's nice.
Thank you.
Nice.
It's a pleasure to be with you guys.
Yes, it's nice to virtually meet you.
Yeah, likewise.
Have you listened to the show before?
I haven't had the pleasure. First time.
All right.
So be gentle.
No. He asked if you've listened to the show. This is the first time you're on it.
Oh, the first time I listened to it, too.
Oh, okay. Wow. Thanks for the support, Dad. Really appreciate it.
Well, listen, Jonathan gave me...
You could send me a text and tell me when you're going to be on,
Well, whatever. All I'm saying is Mom listens every week. Anyways, so my dad's in Florida right now, where it's become, coronavirus has become the epicenter. How's everything going over there?
Everybody's wearing masks. You can't go in the hospitals. They did something really smart months ago. They didn't let people into the long-term care facilities. Something that was really idiotic what they did up in New York. Caused tens of thousands of deaths. But in Florida, the governor was really smart about it. Even people that came down from New York to see their parents, they weren't allowed to go in those long-term care facilities to see their parents. Unfortunately, but it kept them from getting sick.
There's probably some people out there that, are using that as an excuse. Like, oh, I wish I could go visit my parents, but, I'm not allowed.
One person made the suggestion that they could go by the window and have one of the nurses tell them what window they are at, and they could wave to each other.
That's an idea.
Oh, okay, so that's good. Just a wave.
How do you think that woman felt that flew all the way down to New York for a day just to see their parents and wasn't allowed to?
Oh, I mean, I haven't heard about this woman, but
lots of stories like that.
Okay.
There's
my dad went on a date with that woman. Let's talk about more.
I didn't go on a date with her.
Okay.
She was married already.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dad.
So it was just a clandestine affair then. We didn't go out in public.
Not of my religion. Go ahead.
So my dad was a driving force in Judaism growing up in our house, to the rest of my family's dismay. What, your family, Dad, wasn't very religious. They were barely Jewish, right? The way you brought up with your siblings and your parents.
That's a good point. But they were Jewish. They're just not observant. So it's basically, I think it's had to do with education. They just didn't know better. I mean, I became religious the more I learned about it. So it was more like an educational ride with me. The more I learned, the more it made sense, and I became religious.
So, but when you were growing up, did you celebrate Hanukkah or Passover or any of the holidays, or was it just you were just Jewish by just name?
Yeah, I just didn't know any of the Jewish laws or most of the rituals for the first 20-something years, and I've observed. I didn't observe the religion.
Oh, so your family, it was just Jewish by name, and then what?
Yeah,
what
just getting presents 7 days for Hanukkah, or 8 days.
Not 8 days. They weren't that Jewish, Jordan. They only got 7 days. So
well, we had to save one for Christmas.
What changed when you became, I guess, when you were in your 20s, that you I guess went against what your family's belief, or you really took Judaism to heart and you started learning more about it? Why?
I went to the University of Miami, and at the Hello there, I met a religious girl.
It was for a woman, huh?
Yeah, for a very
you did it all for the nookie
lady.
By the way, this wasn't my mom.
It was great incentive, but tell you the truth, the first time she brought up being religious, I asked her, what is it? What do I have to do to be religious? Give me an example. And she said, well, you can't have meat on you can't have pepperoni on your pizza. And I said, I can't have pepperoni on a pizza? Forget it. I don't want to be religious.
I hear you. Pepperoni's delicious. But seriously, okay, let me ask you this question. Was there a situation where this Orthodox girl was you can't get any unless you're more religious?
Never.
Oh.
Okay. But you were so interested in her, and then you started getting more interested in Judaism, and where did you, where were you learning? Where were you getting this information from? Where were you, studying Judaism?
Well, it's, the Young Israel off of, in North Miami Beach. Back then, it was Rabbi Left. There's a rabbi there. He moved to Israel, emigrated to Israel years ago.
And he taught you more about Judaism.
Yeah, you pick a little piece up here or there. You learn at community college. You learn here. You learn there. You just pick it up.
So you ended up marrying this Orthodox Jewish woman. This was your first wife.
No, she wasn't. And
she wasn't.
It's just we went together for 2 years, and it just to be.
Wait, I thought you were married. You weren't married?
Before I met this one, I was married and divorced.
Oh,
so this was the first serious relationship I had.
You were married and divorced, and then you met this Orthodox woman. You were just with her for 2 years, and she turned you on to religion.
Exactly.
God, Dad, such a Rolling Stone. Okay.
You're learning so much about we had to bring you on just so Jonathan could learn more about you.
I know, just so I could get my dad's marriages right. He's divorced from his third wife.
I'm curious. I'm curious. What part of the religion was the thing that got you to start to be like, oh, I really like what they're saying. I feel like I want to learn more. What was the thing that got you feeling like it made sense?
It's just the irony of the religion. I remember learning in the Jewish year 1948, Abraham was promised the land of Israel by Hashem, and in our present year, 1948, is when the state of Israel declared its independence. It's just little things like that I found was very profound and just ironic.
Okay, so irony. My dad got into Judaism because of irony. So then you stopped seeing that woman. You kept Judaism. Then you met my mom. My mom was more come from a traditional household, not very religious. How was it that, from that time you kind of seemed to got more religious? Why? Why did you keep getting more religious from then to, when you had me and my siblings, I guess, until you're divorced from my mother?
Your wonderful mother in the beginning didn't want to become as religious as I, and I respect that. And basically kind of forced her to be religious because it's either being religious or the highway, so to speak. So I decided that's the route I wanted to go, and that's I guess
okay.
Out of being religious, it's just not that I'm 100% observant. It's just I respect the religion. I believe in it. And I believe it's true, and that's it.
What do you get out of it exactly?
It's just doing mitzvahs, observing Shabbos, making Shabbos special, buying food and cooking for Shabbos. And just so much purpose and meaning. Davening in the morning, it gives you just a sense of satisfaction and joy putting on tefillin every morning. I get pleasure out of being religious.
You get pleasure out of being religious. So, you brought us up very religious. It was kind of really a pain in my ass growing up. I did not appreciate the indoctrination. Me and none of my siblings are religious or care much about Judaism from a religious standpoint. Would you have done things differently? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's obviously my failing to inspire you to love the religion. It's definitely a defect on my part. It's nothing to do with you children. You children are wonderful. It's your father. I dropped the ball. I failed you kids. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I mean, but I don't feel like you failed in that regard that we're not religious. But what do you think you could have done differently, or where do you think you went wrong?
I should have spent more time individually with all of you, and I don't know. I had my issues while I was in my 20s. Also, I should have seen the bigger picture instead of being all wrapped up in my silliness, my issues, and I should have been more proactive with your children.
I'll say this.
I could have tried harder.
I'll say this. I don't necessarily think that just because somebody is raised religious and they end up becoming not so. I don't know if that's necessarily a failure, because we all get to make our own decisions on how we want to live our lives. And I think that without having the knowledge of what you're, being raised with a very religious sensibility and then deciding that it's not for you, to me, that's a success. I mean, to realize that, you can take some of the ideas that the religion has, that Judaism has, and you can still believe some of that stuff without believing in the full scripture or in a lot of the rituals or the indoctrination. But you have the information, you have the knowledge, and you've made an informed decision on how you want to live your life separately from that. And I think that to me, choosing to not necessarily to reject that ideology, but to use that as a way to inform your own ideology, to me, that's a success. I'm just saying, in the same way that
a cop-out to say, I give you guys options. So you don't want the religious option, but at least you have that background. So you have that background, whereas a lot of people who are brought up in a liberal upbringing or reform or nothing upbringing, really out of ignorance, don't have an option. But you guys do have an option. And sadly to say, even people more religious than me have children that are gone, decided that they didn't want to be observant.
Absolutely.
How did your parents react to you becoming more religious?
Well, it was an inconvenience in a way. I couldn't come over for Sabbath. I couldn't come over. They couldn't do events on my holidays or my Sabbath. It was an I wouldn't eat at certain restaurants or what have you. So it was a big inconvenience.
But they
Now,
didn't really.
I feel like you've loosened up. You've loosened up a lot, Dad, since when we were growing up. When it comes to Judaism, I feel like you yourself aren't as strict. What changed for you that you kind of became a little more open and not as stricted or as committed to the laws of Judaism that you once were?
You got to be practical in a way, and it's like, for instance, if you're so religious, you wouldn't open up your front door in the summertime because you're letting out the cold air, and you're going to turn on the air conditioning unit, or you want to open up the refrigerator because on Shabbos or Yenta because the refrigerator might go on. It's got to be practical. It's just a lot of the strictness, what they call chumras, is done to put like a fence around the Torah so you don't violate it. But I treat the chumras as rubber bands, and I stretch it as far as humanly possible.
Jonathan and I talk on the show a lot about the anti-Semitism that's prevalent around the world, and its rise. How much more of it there seems to be these days, and how we react to some of that. How neither of us are very religious, but we identify culturally as Jews, and we're very concerned about all the anti-Semitism. I wonder how you feel about what your reaction is and what you do to sort of combat some of that.
Well, it's basically you hear the anti-Israel BS, and that's a form of anti-Semitism. I mean, no people, no nation has more right to the land of Israel than the Jews, and it's written in the Bible, so God gave us that right. There's always going to be a malach. There's always going to be people out there trying to destroy it. It reminds us that we're Jewish. Mm-hmm. Just like being alive. Good thing about pain is you're alive if you feel pain. It's just one of the realities. People are anti-Semitic because they're part of a malach. They want to destroy the Jewish nation, or they're just ignorant.
Have you ever been the victim of anti-Semitism? Have you ever faced it, head on?
I'm a big guy, so nobody's going to pick on a big guy. I mean, most anti-Semites are a bunch of cowards anyway, so no, I can't think of anything. It could be just a bad joke. No, I haven't.
Listen, I don't. You
Okay.
said you don't listen to the show, but we have a lot of bad jokes on here, so don't worry about that.
That's pretty funny.
So we like to ask all our guests a couple questions. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Gee, all the above. I love them all. I love Shavuos, Sukkot, Pesach. Each one has its own magic.
What's your favorite Jewish food?
I eat everything, so I love it all. I mean, I make an awesome matzo ball soup. I make a killer turkey. I mean, I eat.
I didn't know turkey was a Jewish food. Who's your favorite Jew, Dad, of all time? It could be biblical, it could be a celebrity, it could be an athlete, it could be anyone.
Well, I like Menachem Begin, Ariel Sharon. I like the current Prime Minister of Israel. I was in Israel, I think it was 1973, during the Entebbe raid where his brother was killed. I was down off a place called Nereva when I saw the 130 Hercules plane coming over. At the time, I didn't know they were being rescued. There's a lot of Jewish heroes out there.
My dad is horrible with favorites, and I won't ask him who's his favorite kid. Thanks for coming on the show, Dad. I hope you'll come back again and we could talk more about the past and maybe even the future.
Yeah, anytime. You're the eldest. As the eldest, you're the favorite. I mean, you got a lot going for you, Jonathan.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Dad. All right, thanks, Dad.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Stay
Talk to you
safe.
soon.
I love you. Hi, Israel.
Well, we want to thank my dad for bringing me into the world and for being on the show.
Yes.
We want to say Ice Cube, stop it. Nick Cannon, appreciate the apology. Next time, watch your mouth. People of Israel, keep on protesting and fighting for what you believe in.
And three cheers for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Also, got to keep.
Go Kareem.
We all got to be working on our skyhook.
Hey, if you're not following us on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, you need to do so. American Jew Podcast on Twitter. It's just American Jew Pod. Email us, AmericanJewPodcast@gmail.com if you think there's something we should talk about, if there's something you disagree with, if you just want to say hi, if you want to set us up with your beautiful Jewish daughter. You can find me on social media, on all social media, including Venmo, at Jonathan Randall. We're going to get a Patreon page going soon, so look out for that.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at BeatnikNudnik. And like we said at the top, if you go to the iTunes and leave a nice 5-star rating and a review for the show, we would love you for it. I'm getting
love, not hate.
Yeah, I'm getting verklempt just thinking about the notion that you're doing that right now. Okay. Ta-ta for now.